Uh-huh. I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods, yeah. One in particular, I'm just a messenger, let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you, you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box. And you cannot compare them at all, so don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table. Yeah. Fantasy round table, come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table. Woo. Fantasy round table, come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Football Roundtable podcast. It is Tuesday. We are looking back on Thanksgiving week 12, getting ready to start week 13 here on Thursday night. But it is Tuesday, and you know what that means. It is time to look at the Fantasy Football Roundtable League, getting closer to the playoffs. And Dennis, it looks like Chubb's broken wheel was actually the high scorer in the league this week, which is kind of surprising to me because Justin Herbert was fairly meh. I guess the rest of my team kind of making up for it. Now sitting at 10-2, is still one game back of our friend John Hamlers, but it looks like both of us have qualified for the playoffs. Other than that, it is a pretty hot race. Your wife and Sloopy Lou at 7-5. And then Matt, DDH Matt, Jonathan Weber, and it looks like your sister-in-law are 6-6.
Right. Got a little congestion going on there for those last couple playoff spots. Yeah, it's funny. I was talking to Dan. You know, he posted in the chat. He felt like he was hoping against hope that Cole Kmet would go nuts last night, and DJ Moore would tank a little bit, and he'd be able to pull off the upset of you. But it was not meant to be.
Yeah, I mean, I feel bad for him. 170 points. That should win most weeks. He was actually the second highest scorer in the league. But I think, it was really the end for DJ Moore, because I'm looking 22-40. He had that couple of huge passes in the fourth quarter because he wasn't doing a lot early in the game. And I was watching Herbert on Sunday night. My one undefeated team, all I needed was like a 15-point mid game from Herbert to win. And of course, leave it to the Chargers. I don't want to rely on them in real life. Shouldn't rely on them in fantasy. Of course, they boned me. And so my undefeated season, I lost by 1.5.
So I have one 11-1 team, and the team that beat me is a middle of the pack team. I have outscored. I'm a high scorer in the league by over 300 points. My team is that dominant, and I just had a crap week. It just happens sometimes.
It looks like the good news for me is my Scott Fishbowl team also had high score in our league, so hopefully that means I'll move up on the cut.
What's the Scott Fishbowl again?
Never heard of her. Something that you're always really excited about in July, and by September you have a lot what we like to call regret.
Right.
Speaking of regret, that was tattooed all over Robert Saleh's face in the first ever NFL Black Friday game, as we saw the Miami Dolphins get the 34-13 victory over the New York Jets. Dennis, was not particularly a great game for our friend Tim Boyle, but we will get to that in a minute. For the Dolphins, Tyreek Hill gets a lot of the praise and a lot of the publicity, and rightly so. He's putting up some gaudy numbers. But his buddy Jalen Waddle, he is also putting up some big numbers on Black Friday there, he had 8 for 114. How do you feel about Waddle going down the stretch? Do you think he's a kind of top 12 option?
So Waddle is wide receiver 27 on the season in PPR leagues, which has been a bit disappointing, to be fair, especially considering the hot start. He had his first couple games. They looked like they were going to coexist quite peacefully. And then Waddle faded and got injured and missed some time. And, I think that it's more of I'd like to see him up around wide receiver 18. Was he probably overvalued going into the season? Yeah, I think a little bit. I mean, Tyreek still had 12 targets to Waddle's 8 and caught 9 passes to Waddle's 8, and Tyreek got the touchdown. So Waddle is going to be the number 2 as long as Tyreek Hill is there, but it is a very potent passing attack. The challenge is that some games they just don't throw a lot. We've seen their running game explode and put up, couple hundred yards each from, Mostert and Achane against Denver. It seemed like they put up 500 yards each.
Well, it also, the big thing I've noticed from Mostert seems to be he gets a lot of touchdown opportunities, and I think that's probably what hurts Waddle the most. He's still catching a lot of passes, but he doesn't always get the deep balls, and he doesn't get a ton of red zone work.
Yeah.
On the flip side, for the Jets, they've already announced they're sticking with Tim Boyle. I guess decisions die hard, but 27 to 38, 179 yards, a touchdown, 2 interceptions, one of which was the most epically depressing pick 6 that a team could ever give up to end the first half. I will give him points for knowing that he should go to Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall. Breece Hall looking very, what was it, week 5, week 6, Alvin Kamara there with 7 receptions for 24 yards and 25 yards rushing to kind of buoy his day. Garrett Wilson gets into the end zone. But how do you feel about Tim Boyle as the Jets guy?
So he had a phenomenal completion rate, which is counter to what his college career would have told you to expect. Like he had some low 50s in 3 of his 4 years in college. But he also wasn't throwing it down the field, a 4.71 yard per completion. He took 6 sacks. I mean, I get it that you want to do something that's not Zach Wilson, but you also, you want to do something that's not Tim Boyle as well. I fully expect there to be a power struggle in the offseason, much like we saw in Carolina this week. And I think Joe Douglas said, look, I spent the second overall pick on Zach Wilson. You're going to make him work. And Saleh was like, I need a better quarterback to make this work. And watching Saleh with that quarterbacking he's been having between Wilson and now Boyle, he looks dead inside.
Yeah, it could end up potentially costing him his job. I like him as a coach, and I think what he's done with that defense is impressive, but we have not seen the Jets be able to accomplish much of anything. I don't know if he'll get a pass because Aaron Rodgers isn't there, but obviously he's not vibing with a lot of people on the team. Allen Lazard was a healthy scratch. I still don't think Nathaniel Hackett was the best hire they could make. I'm not sure that really has set their offense on a good stretch. But what would be a fun / depressing competition is to sit there and decide who has the worst top 2 option quarterback, the Patriots, which we will get to a little bit later, or the Jets. You have on the one end of the AFC East, Tua Tagovailoa and Josh Allen, which are about the top you can get it there. And the other end, not looking good. Let me ask you this. The rumors for a long time have been Rodgers could return at the end of the season if they were in playoff contention. I just don't see any way right now that the Jets are good enough for him to consider coming back.
Yeah, I am of the belief that he isn't going to be healthy enough to come back. It's one thing to throw some passes on the sideline or in practice. But, when you got the beef bearing down on you there, it can get a little harrowing trying to move, and you're going to be thinking about the Achilles and trying to avoid contact. I am not a believer that he's coming back.
Well, the worst thing would be to have him come back in service of like a 6-11 season in the finale and get hurt again and then actually miss the next year. So next up, we had a big battle for the NFC South. The New Orleans Saints went into Atlanta and suffered a 24-15 loss. Dennis, Derek Carr, 24-38, 304 yards, did some good things with Olave. No touchdowns, one interception. The team could only muster 5 field goals, a big part of why they couldn't get the win. They were leading the division, now 5-6. They're behind Atlanta, still in the contention. Do you think there's any thought that they give Jameis Winston a shot?
Look, the Saints clearly think that Derek Carr is the better quarterback. And why they brought Jameis Winston back instead of letting him go somewhere and try to be a starter is beyond me. Winston and Carr could not have more opposing. I mean, Winston and Carr, it's like if the Ravens had Jackson and Flacco. I mean, their styles are just that diametrically opposite. Winston's chucking it down the field, and Carr is checking it down to the backs and tight ends. I think Winston should be getting the opportunity. I don't know that Dennis Allen survives the season, and now he's looks like without Olave and Shaheed this week. Mike Thomas is on IR, so it's going to be the Foster Moreau, Juwan Johnson show.
Taysom Hill, option runs with Taysom Hill. Yeah, it's they've kind of faded down pretty good. On the flip side, Bijan Robinson, 16 carries, 91 yards and a touchdown, caught 3 passes on 6 targets for 32 yards and a touchdown. Are we kind of slowly seeing him take over and be kind of what we were hoping he would be?
I think some of it was just a function of how the game went. I know he got the most touches, but Algier still had 10 carries, and Cordero Patterson had 8 carries. It was, it's just a weird situation there with Arthur Smith. And, Bijan is productive in the passing game. He scored the touchdown too. It was almost everything we hoped for. If we could have gotten half of the other carries to Bijan, he might have had 3 or 4 touchdowns. You give him another 9 carries, give him 23, 24 carries to go along with those 6 targets. Do you want to run your guy into the ground? No, but look, man, he's 21-year-old, 215, 220-pound running back with a ton of explosiveness. He's a difference maker. I think he's like RB. I think he was RB 3 or 4 this week, something. RB2, way up there. I don't know if you can give him the ball too much for fantasy managers.
I don't know how much Arthur Smith cares about our fantasy teams.
All we care about is winning. I would think Arthur relates to that.
Let's see.
Lo and behold, he does not understand winning.
Week 12, Bijan Robinson was RB3.
Okay.
There was Kyron, Christian McCaffrey, then Bijan Robinson. So, not bad. Next up, Pittsburgh Steelers battled the Cincinnati Bengals, got the 16-10 win. Dennis, first game without Matt Canada. They went over 400 yards, which is good. 278 yards passing, decent percentage, no turnovers, no passing touchdowns, 153 yards rushing. They didn't score a lot. It was a good day for Najee, 15 carries, 99 yards, a touchdown, kind of looked like the back we saw a couple of years ago. Pat Freiermuth looked really good, 9 for 120. How are you feeling about the Pittsburgh offense?
It's, it was a very well-balanced offense. They ran 33 runs and 33 passes. Now, 3 of those runs were Pickett, so I don't know if it was a function of him scrambling and it counted as a run. I don't think they were designed runs. Cincinnati gives up, they're about 10th in the league in rush yards. So it seemed to be a game that lined up pretty well for Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren. Pickett did throw the ball downfield a little bit more, but that worked out well for him. I don't know how consistently he'll be able to. I mean, a lot of it was stuff down the seam with Pat Freiermuth. Muth had 11 targets. Deontay Johnson had 8 with 4 catches. Nobody else really put up big numbers other than Freiermuth. And I think I was listening to Lindsay Rhodes today, and she said that one of the things is that teams that play cover 2 shell or 2 high safety shells are very susceptible to passing over the middle, tight ends, and Cincinnati plays that more than any other team in the league. So Freiermuth going off makes a ton of sense there.
I also think he's probably one of their best and most steady receivers. So that helps, especially since both of his wide receivers seem like they're trending toward prima donna territory.
Yeah, losing their minds.
The Bengals, meanwhile, they got Jake Browning, no more Joe Burrow. They can't seem to run the ball. Talking about shutting T. Higgins down for the season. Defense, not incredibly impressive. They're 5-6, which is only good enough to be 11th or 12th in the AFC right now. Is their playoff window kind of swinging shut?
It's looking that way, man. I don't know what kind of miracle Zach Taylor might be able to pull, but sitting at 5-6 with the Steelers 2 games behind the Steelers and maybe 27 games behind the Ravens, it's not looking good for them. We have seen replacement quarterbacks get better though. Tommy DeVito's had some uptick. Josh Dobbs, he didn't necessarily get better. He seems to decline a little bit.
We'll wait till we get there.
So
it did help that DeVito was playing a couple of mid opponents.
Right. But, I think in sports, a lot of becoming successful is playing well against teams you should play well against. And if he's supposed to play well against them, then he should play well. So DeVito's done that. We'll see. Browning may be able to rally them to a wild card berth, but I wouldn't expect anything more than a one and done. And to be honest, it's probably better for them to not win more games so they get better draft capital.
Next up, an all-around depressing game. The Carolina Panthers travel to play the Tennessee Titans. Titans got the 17-10 victory, scored all 17 of their points in the first half because, of course, they did. The Panthers, 1-10, made the decision to fire Frank Reich, their head coach, after 11 games. I know we were chatting about it a little bit in our Twitter chat. Panthers don't have a first-round pick, don't really seem to have much in the way of receivers. Even Adam Thielen has cooled off. Don't have much in the way of a running game. Going to be looking for a coach. What kind of things do they need to try to get on a winning path?
What don't they need? Now, it's a tough situation, and then the owner comes out today talking about, well, the plan was always to trade up to number 2 and take CJ Stroud, but then Houston backed out. And, so Bryce was our guy. And when he was there at 2, it was a weird.
The whole back and forth about it coming out that Frank Reich wanted CJ Stroud and got somebody else. None of this season could have done anything for Bryce Young in terms of confidence or development.
It was, and it's easy to believe that Reich did not want Young. And the thing is Stroud was still there if he was your guy. I think Reich just got overruled. And was it the ultimate in diss that the owner didn't even pronounce your name right in the press conference? Trying to tell you how much he respects the effort you put in and mispronounces your name. But it was, I mean, they can Josh McCown, their quarterback's coach. They can their running backs coach. They're cleaning house.
They seem to have demoted Caldwell, who was the assistant head coach, is still the assistant. I mean, you would have thought that would be a pretty natural interim guy, and they went all around him, and he's not even really involved with the offense, according to what I saw anymore.
Yeah, it's a weird situation. This is what the next coach, the permanent coach they hire will become the 8th head coach in 5 years, I think, in Carolina.
Yeah, it's not a good situation. It's hard to imagine they're going to get a lot of top tier talent interested.
No, but they do need offensive line help. They have the second lowest yards before contact per rush attempt at 0.77, and their 39 sacks given up are the 4th most in the NFL. And they've got a mobile quarterback. Bryce Young is very mobile, and he's still 4th in sacks.
Yeah. On the other side, Titans are now 4-7, probably not a playoff team for them either. You know, Will Levis, they seem to be trotting him out there. He hasn't done too bad, but kind of what do you feel about the Titans? Do you think they try to build around that? Do you think they are in for kind of a rebuild? Derrick Henry and DeAndre Hopkins, probably their 2 best skill position players, getting a little older.
Well, I kind of like the theory that Vrabel is going to force his way out of Tennessee and go become the new Patriots head coach. I'm not sure if Vrabel. I don't know if rebuilding in Tennessee is like on his to-do list. It feels like he's been there, 8 years now, 9 years? It's been a while. It seems like forever. And I think he may just be ready to move on for something new. There's talk that, he wasn't necessarily a Ran Carthon guy, and, that he doesn't necessarily think Carthon is doing a great job. And so now we've got GM head coach fractures, and I don't know. They're an old team. They've got a couple young pieces, but their stars are old. Tannehill, they've just decided he's done. They're not even giving him a shot. And Malik Willis seems like a wasted draft pick. I don't know why you even make that pick. And now you got to see, can somebody get something out of Will Levis? Can they make him a starting quarterback? Can he become, can he be Daniel Jones? That's kind of where I think that's where I see his ceiling at, is Daniel Jones. Maybe not as athletic running wise, but Treylon Burks, seems to jump and fall and hurt himself every game he's healthy and misses time.
Yeah, not seeming great.
Now, I will say I did write Derrick Henry up as one of my starts in the cutback article, running back start sits. Now he's RB11, and of course he was ranked as RB11, and so you're going to start that guy, but this was more about the expectation, and I think he finishes RB4, RB5 this week. So I feel like I nailed that one.
Next up, the Indianapolis Colts hosted the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and got the 27-20 victory. Dennis, the Buccaneers are only 4-7, but they're kind of that third team in that NFC South 3-team race, really only a game back of first place. What a wonderful division the NFC South is. How do you feel about them as contenders?
They've got some firepower with Baker's willingness to just kind of go for it. What's that? Let's see. Crazy. It's crazy that they're just one game out of first place at 4-7. that couldn't understand what my note meant. But they don't have, they're not getting outscored by a lot. They have a minus 0.8 scoring differential, and they've got some winnable games the last 6. They're Carolina at home, at Atlanta, at Green Bay, Jacksonville, New Orleans, and then at Carolina. So those 2 games at Carolina line up nice. And Carolina's run defense is every bit as bad as Indianapolis is. So Rachaad White, who's been terribly, terribly inefficient, but getting workhorse volume in Tampa and catching a ton of passes, should be good to go. I mean, I would expect this week against Carolina, he might even score a rushing touchdown of all things. But I like the position that they're in. New Orleans is not healthy. Atlanta, I think they're going to get Arthur Smith. So the potential is there.
For the Colts, it was a great game for Jonathan Taylor, and then he injured his thumb, is now having surgery. So we're probably going back to Zach Moss. If the playoffs started today, the Colts would actually be the 7th seed in the AFC, but they're part of that kind of pack of teams at 6-7 wins. How do you feel about the Colts?
Like the Fantasy Football Roundtable League there.
I know.
I felt a lot better when Jonathan Taylor was healthy. But I thought I saw today he's going to have surgery on his finger and miss 2 or 3 games. Gardner.
Yeah, that's what they said. Surgery on his thumb.
Gardner. It's been a thummy season. So Gardner Minshew is, where is he? Forget my notes. He's QB 19 since he took over in week 6. That's not like super impressive numbers, and he backed that up again this week with 250 yards and no touchdowns. He did get a rushing touchdown, but only ran the ball for 6 total yards. So he'll get you 1 here or there. I do feel like Zach Moss is in a great situation. We've seen him come in there and be the guy. Now they're going to elevate probably Trey Sermon will be back up, I think is who they have as their 3rd back. So he'll get up and get some run. But they don't have any issues giving Zach Moss workhorse carries. And now they're looking at it going, well, we only have 6 games left to go. Let's ride this puppy out. Michael Pittman has been balling out, doing a great job. Josh Downs is still putting up good numbers at the underneath. They don't have a tight end. They just don't seems like they don't even use them. But Pittman and Josh.
I feel like the real problem is they have 4 or 5 tight ends.
Right.
They use each of them a couple of plays a game. That's not
it's great. Am I okay if I have to start Minshew in a super flex league? I suppose. I'd rather have somebody a little higher end. But I'm comfortable with Moss. Cole's going to get Zach Moss back this week now in the Fantasy Football Roundtable League. So we'll see if maybe he can close out his season with a couple of victories here.
I was going to look at their remaining schedule because
they're at Tennessee, at Cincinnati, at home against Pittsburgh, at Atlanta, Las Vegas at home, and Houston at home.
So they don't have a terrible schedule down the stretch. I guess it just kind of depends on, and they've quietly won 3 in a row. So it's something to keep an eye on. Next up, we had a battle at the top of the AFC South, and that was the Jacksonville Jaguars playing the Houston Texans. A great game, came down to the wire. Jacksonville gets the 24-21 win. The Texans had beaten the Jaguars earlier this season, and we've seen, Jacksonville, they're trying to hang on there in that upper echelon. How important was this win for them?
I think it was super important. They're trying to stay up on Houston, not get caught. Travis Etienne looked great earlier in the season, got great volume, 20 carries, only 56 yards. And he caught 4 passes for 30. So he had a little production there. He got you double-digit points. Ridley's the one who came out surprising, caught the touchdown pass. When Zay Jones is in there, Calvin Ridley has been crushing. Ridley is now past Christian Kirk in the wide receiver on the year. Ridley's wide receiver 21, and Kirk is now wide receiver 23. But even then, Kirk still had a good game, 4 for 89. Just Trevor didn't throw but the one touchdown pass. So and Evan Ingram, again, he had a good game. He's tight end 7. And ETN's still sitting there at RB3. So they have good weapons for fantasy. Trevor's a high-end QB2. He needs to go with that 364 yards, man. Give me more than one touchdown. Get it in the end zone.
Yeah. I mean, well, he did get a rushing touchdown.
Yeah.
On the flip side for the Texans, another pretty great game for them. They were very close, but we saw Dameon Pierce back. He got the start and seemed to get a lot of the work early, and we're back to almost no running game. If you took CJ Stroud's 47 yards rushing out of it and Tank Dell's 12 yards rushing out of it, you saw 11 carries for 32 yards from the back. Are they just a better team without Dameon Pierce?
I think they have to figure out what is good for them with Dameon Pierce and still continue to give Devin Singletary the touches. I get it. He had 7 targets, but he only had 6 carries. It doesn't feel like the game was too far out of reach, was it? Let's see, 15-7.
They were always kind of within a touchdown.
So to me, that feels like you want to keep riding Singletary, who's been hot the last few weeks. Ride him till he breaks. Then when you're forced to use Pierce, use him. Nico Collins, fantastic day for fantasy. Tank Dell, another good day for fantasy. They've got weapons. Stroud, another 300-yard game, 2 touchdowns. Andy had a rushing touchdown with almost 50 yards. So he keeps putting it up. So I've got a contract league that I'm in, and it's my only Devy league, and I drafted CJ Stroud last year. So promoted to the big squad this year, but my quarterback is actually Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes, though, is in I franchise tagged him because I didn't want to put him back out on the block. Well, his contract is $32 million, and it's a $90 million salary cap. So I'm not going to be doubling. If you franchise him again, it doubles again. So I feel so fortunate with the year that CJ Stroud has had that I'm going to be able to let Patrick Mahomes go back into free agency.
Well, that'll be good. I mean, Stroud's been great. It reminds me almost, not to say Joe Burrow and Tua Tagovailoa haven't been viable for fantasy, but you had a draft a couple of years ago, where those guys were going, pretty much 1 and 2, and you could get Justin Herbert late because he wasn't going. And for fantasy purposes, probably that first year, that was, a gold mine. Kind of almost reminds me of that set of rookie draft because you have Richardson, who was doing really well but got hurt and missed most of the season. Young hasn't started out that great, but maybe a change of head coaches, maybe they'll all end up being great. But out of the box, Stroud, who is most people's third choice, has definitely paid dividends. Well, from one of the best games of the day to arguably the worst, the New England Patriots traveled to play the New York Giants, and it was a 10-7 Giants victory. Dennis Mac Jones, 12 of 21, 89 yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions, pulled for the 4th time this season, replaced by Bailey Zappi. Is he done in New England?
I don't know if he's done. I know that there just seems to be something going on behind the scenes that things are not clicking. Whether they feel stuck, they can't. Whether he's frustrated with the offense or the lack of weapons, something is not going right. And it basically all keeps coming back down to Mac. But it's not like Bailey Zappi's the answer. Do you move on? Maybe, but you don't move on to Bailey Zappi. I think their issues are a lot bigger than Mac Jones. But if I can keep getting 98 yards and a touchdown with 5 catches out of Ramondre Stevenson, I'll take that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if Bailey Zappi's the answer either. I saw some arguments that they need to go find somebody else, but I don't think there is anybody else this season. They're kind of, they kicked the tires with Will Greer, who they cut free. I guess you could choose the guy that they have that's really a wide receiver, Marcus
Malik Cunningham.
Malik Cunningham. I guess you try him, but the Patriots, I know they don't have technically the worst record, but I think they are literally the worst team in the NFL. On the other side, Giants have now won 2 in a row, up to 4-8. Should they be trying to win?
I mean, from do you want to be able to draft the best players? Probably not, but let's see, where are they? They're at pick 6 right now. I don't know that they're going to be able to get out of Daniel Jones's contract. And so it feels like,
well, they also, I don't know if you saw, their GM came out and said the first game of 2024, Daniel Jones is our starter.
Right. But I mean, what else would you expect him to say?
I don't think at this point in time he has to make any kind of a commitment.
So, I mean, we'll see what the New York press was saying. I think they need offensive linemen. They need to keep drafting offensive linemen.
Which
offensive
I don't disagree with you, but they have drafted offensive linemen and wide receivers. They just suck at it.
Yeah. Sign free agents. They just need more.
They also suck at signing free. I mean, all the things you would say they should be doing, like investing draft capital in offensive line and wide receivers. I mean, we've seen them do it the last couple of years, just not well. Do you think they managed to keep Saquon again?
I don't think so. I don't think they'll have to overpay for him. And I just think Joe Shane will say, look, we'd love to have you back, but here's our limit. And we're not going to franchise tag you again. And I don't know that Eric Gray is the answer, but
glad I'm not a New York resident or fan, because talking about a couple depressed fan bases, Bills fan base right there with them. Next up, Cleveland Browns travel to play the Denver Broncos, who got their 5th straight win, 29-12. Dennis, Cleveland has a pretty great defense, this game notwithstanding. 7-4. If the playoffs started today, they'd be, I believe, the 6th seed. Do they have enough offense? I was just listening to NFL Network Radio, and Jim Miller said that he believes they're going to turn it over to Joe Flacco for the rest of the season.
I don't know that they have another choice. I think DTR I think he's got a concussion. Who's the other guy?
PJ Walker.
PJ Walker. Look, I mean, and to be fair, the Jets were productive for fantasy last year with Joe Flacco, and the Browns have a pretty good offensive line. Flacco ain't going to run nowhere, but if they can give him a little bit of time, I think he can still make some throws. He's got to be better than PJ Walker. He's got to be better than Zach Wilson and Tim Boyle, and he's probably the 33rd, 35th, 37th best quarterback.
Oh, you're right. I would start Flacco over Boyle. Depending on the matchup, I'd go over DeVito. I'd go over whatever the hell the Patriots are going to throw out there. There are some horrendous quarterback situations right now. I'm not saying he would be the worst. It just, poor Cleveland. I mean, to have invested their 2 by far best offensive players are out, but it's also an underrated heck of a job by Kevin Stefanski, because being 7-4 with what you've gotten out of Deshaun Watson and the limited amount of time you had Nick Chubb is, to me, actually a pretty impressive.
I think if we can get Amari Cooper back, if he that doesn't miss this week, I'm going to feel a lot better about things if he's not injured.
Kind of like what I saw from Tillman, though. If Njoku could actually hold on to the ball, that would help.
And Eli Moore, we've got some people that can make some plays. We just got to get a quarterback, and Flacco can make the decision, and hopefully he can still throw the ball, and hopefully he doesn't get his head knocked off, because dude cannot move.
Broncos, meanwhile, started out 1-5, have won 5 straight, something they haven't done since Peyton Manning was there in 2015. 6-5, they're coming on at the right time in the thick of that, pack of the soft middle in the AFC trying to make the playoffs. How do you feel about the Broncos?
I think the Broncos are, they're playing really, really well. Cortland Sutton is making great plays. Seems like they're starting to remember that they drafted Marvin Mims for a reason. Yeah.
To be fair, they just needed him to catch the effing ball.
Yeah, I like that they're giving Javonte Williams the ball at good volume. Keep that up. Do more of that.
They actually, I'll be honest, I think they look good with the rotation of Javonte Williams and Samaje Perine, who are both bigger and hammers. And when they put McLaughlin back there and run those same running plays, it just crushes my spirit.
McLaughlin's just such a different type of player. And to try to keep doing what you do with your big guys, it just doesn't make a ton of sense. But I'm all for, I'd rather, to be honest, I'd rather Javonte Williams get the rushing touchdown than Samaje Perine. But let's keep going.
I know, that was one
Williams
of those
did have
where I jumped up and screamed and cheered, and then thought about it, and I was like, damn, I wish they would have put somebody else in. Los Angeles Rams traveled to play the Arizona Cardinals, and the Cardinals looked really limp. It was a 37-14 beatdown at the hands of the Los Angeles Rams. Dennis, how good is it to have Kyren Williams back for the Rams, and how do you feel about him in Dynasty?
Well, apparently it's freaking great for the Rams. I mean, dude, put up some numbers. For Dynasty, I think you've got to approach it as a hashtag 2 to 3 year window. He's 5'10" and 200 pounds, and he's gonna get banged up. But man, when he's playing, you're gonna play him. It's 6 targets, caught all 6 for 61 yards and 2 touchdowns, 143 yards rushing. I mean, that makes life easy for Matthew Stafford. Stafford only threw for 229 yards, but had 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, 2 of them to Higbee, and then Royce Freeman got a touchdown. People are just sitting there like, God damn you, Sean McVay. The Rams actually, too, 5-6. They're currently the 8th seed in the NFC. They're coming on kind of at the right time. The NFC, you can make it around or slightly under 500. The Cardinals, meanwhile, they are 2-10, finally going into their bye. Kyler Murray wasn't bad, 27-45, 256, a touchdown, no interceptions. Also had a rushing touchdown on his only carry. The team just does not look very good. They're right now, if the season ended today, I believe they would have the number 2 overall pick. Do you think we're looking at a quarterback change there, or do you think they're going to try to build around Murray?
I think they're going to build around Murray. Murray's QB9 over the last 3 weeks since he came back. He threw for 256 and he had a touchdown. He ran in a touchdown. They need something. You can't have Greg Dortch going 9 targets and 3 catches for 27 yards. I like that they're targeting Trey McBride a lot. He caught 7 and 9 for 60 yards. Marquise Brown, 6 of 12 for 88. Honestly, they just needed to get it in the end zone a little bit more. make a couple more plays. He had 9 targets to the running backs. So it was good to see James Conner get some targets, but it looked like Michael Carter has established him a role as the the change of pace third down back.
I could see Michael Carter having a bigger role, or at least keeping a role going forward. Because I think Connor was on a 2-year or a 3-year contract that he signed last year, so might be getting close to the end of his run there in Arizona.
I mean, Gannon has a defensive background, and I think he's going to want to build that side of the ball. I think he looks at Michael Wilson and Trey McBride, and he may say, I don't need to invest high value draft capital in bigger receivers.
They do have Marquise Brown too, if they could kind of get it going.
Exactly. So, they've got Rondale Moore that they can use as a weapon. If they can just get, if they can pick up maybe a free agent to add to the mix, gives them something, an intermediate guy, or I'm not exactly sure. Maybe, I don't know. Connor looks pretty good this year. He doesn't look as old as I think he is, but he also missed some time with injuries, and I feel like Gannon's going to try to invest in the build it from the inside out, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So I think Kyler is going to be, unless somebody blows him away for Kyler.
Probably not going to happen. The Kansas City Chiefs traveled to play the Las Vegas Raiders, got a 31-17 victory. Slow start there for the Kansas City Chiefs, but when they started funneling the offense through Pacheco and Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce, really picked things up. Rice ended up leading the team in targets, caught 8 for 107 and touchdown. Seems to continue to be getting stronger as we go through his first season. Has he become an every week start for you?
Man, if he's going to put up 8 catches for 107 yards and a touchdown, he is. I feel like he's ascended, and it's going to be, I don't think game script dependent so much as it'll be game plan dependent with Rashee Rice. He'll have a decent enough floor, I think. I think he'll have like a 5 or 6 target floor, and it'll depend on can he convert them. So if he's getting 6 targets and converting 4 of them for, 60 yards, the opportunity is going to be there. He is the best wide receiver on that team. And I think, the weird line, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, 1 target, 1 catch for -1 yard. It's like, you can't use Marquez Valdes-Scantling like that.
I mean, we should still celebrate the success of him playing, because I saw a meme this week that suggested he was the first NFL receiver born without hands. So,
right.
Meanwhile, for the Raiders, we've seen Devontae Adams doing pretty well since the coaching change. Josh Jacobs has really taken off. Neither of those guys seem particularly happy in Las Vegas. Do you think that one or either of them will be there next year?
Well, Adams, I think the contract is pretty detrimental to him being moved.
Although the Jets seem to apparently be in love with the idea.
Yeah, because they have Aaron Rodgers and Nathaniel Hackett. We'll see what happens with the Jets.
Can you imagine if they F up and send Garrett Wilson?
Man, yes, I can imagine.
Well, I could see the Jets doing it, and then they're like, we'll run it back with Adams and Lazard and Randall Cobb.
That's crazy. That is just that's bonkers.
But I mean, if I'm the Raiders, I'm like, bro, I don't need your draft picks. Give me
right
or Breece Hall.
Yeah. So I don't think Jacobs is back. I think he's out the door, just because of what the market will be, and he's going to go where he can get the most money. This season, Antonio Pierce is featuring his stars since he took over, and that's Jacobs, that's Adams, and even Jacoby Myers. So,
they even remembered Hunter Renfrow lives a couple of these.
Yeah, That was something, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It'd be nice. We need O'Connell to get maybe more than one touchdown pass, but I think O'Connell is settling in. I don't know if he's going to be a guy that they say, we want to move forward with you as a starter. But with the Raiders, there's always weird contract stuff that happens because of Mark Davis's cash flow. And so it'll be interesting to watch this offseason. They've got so much money tied up in Devontae Adams. They've still got Garoppolo under contract. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I don't know if they have the cap space to do it, but I still think the Jets are going to make a play for him. And I think, honestly, it almost feels like the Raiders are going to let him go just because they get tired of dealing with it. If you were a new coach coming in, the last thing you need is somebody that's been disgruntled for 2 years. That's your best player soaking up all that cap. Next up, what was probably the game of the day, Buffalo Bills against the Philadelphia Eagles, a heck of an overtime battle. They were tied at 31 in regulation. Eagles get the 37-34 victory. Got to be crushing for Josh Allen. Played his heart out. 339 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, had 81 yards rushing, and 2 more touchdowns. But the Bills now 6-6. Are they in trouble?
Yeah, it seems like it. They, I think they make the playoffs as a wild card team. I think that's there. They've got guys like Gabe Davis had a great game, and if you started him in fantasy, you're considering yourself lucky. Diggs had a good game. Cooks had a good.
This was your one Gabe Davis game for the next month.
He's had 2 or 3 of them this year.
No, for the next month, I mean.
Oh. James Cook was productive. He put up some points. Dalton Kincaid, he had an okay day. But really it was Josh Allen with the 2 touchdowns on the ground and the 81 yards. They're struggling a bit on their offensive line. And so good teams with good rushing, good pass rush are getting pressure on him and making things hard for him. And you really don't want that. He hasn't. It's not been his best year. I know they Ken Dorsey. We'll see where they go in the offseason. They don't feel like they're a deep playoff run team, but they do feel like they can be a wild card team.
Maybe they'll pull in Frank Reich for offense. Just, it'll make Matt really happy. Meanwhile, Jalen Hurts had himself a game too. 3 passing touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns himself. Dallas Goedert's been out the last 2 weeks. AJ Brown had only 1 reception last week. He still had 9 targets this week, but only 5 for 37. Kind of bails you out getting a touchdown there. But is this a worrying sign or, just part of the natural flow for Philly?
They're gonna be a little bit up and down. They want to grind it out. The receivers, when Goddard is out, Devontae Smith plays really, really well. A.J. Brown's numbers were funky, only 37 yards, but DeAndre Swift has been crushing it. And their defense just gets after the quarterback. How many sacks did they get? Looks like they only sacked Josh Allen 1 time. But it seemed like
he took off running.
They were constantly
for 81.
making him get up and get out. I do appreciate the game from Jalen Hurts in my one standard league that I play in. That was nice.
That was nice. Sunday Night Football, Baltimore Ravens at the Los Angeles Chargers got the 20-10 victory. The Ravens go into their late bye week as the number 1 overall seed in the AFC currently, sitting at 9-3. We also saw Keaton Mitchell kind of taking over in the backfield, got carries early, led the team in carries with 9, 64 yards rushing, had a couple of receptions. Is he kind of the future of the backfield there in Baltimore?
Depends on what that future is. Could he be the most productive guy for fantasy? Maybe. But I mean, it's like Devon Achane. He's going to get low volume, and you're hoping for explosive plays. 9 carries feels like the top end of where you want to be with him. What did he had? He only had 2 targets. I feel like you probably want him to be more in the 6 target, 5 or 6 carry, 5 target kind of range of touches. Get him out in space where maybe he can get out of bounds instead of taking hits. He's an explosive back, but he's 5'8" and 190 pounds, 185 pounds. He's never going to take the, goal line work away from Lamar Jackson and Gus Edwards. If he can get in the end zone from, the 15, the 18, the 20, great. He's got that explosiveness. To me, he feels like a guy that I'm always going to hesitate to put him in as a running back, but I'll be okay putting him in my flex.
Meanwhile, on a night where Zay Flowers caught a touchdown and rushed for a touchdown, Quentin Johnson, who was taken 1 pick in front of him, had 1 reception for 7 yards on 3 targets. I've seen a lot of people really down on Johnson, especially the last couple of weeks. How are you feeling about him as a prospect?
I mean, he's starting to feel a little bit like the 2023 Treylon Burks.
I forgot Treylon Burks was even in the league. I don't know if we've seen him.
It's the weird thing is that he's got a good skill set to do certain types of things. And Brandon Staley and Kellen Moore, whether it's because of the other guys they have on the team, he's not a featured player. He's not earning targets. Occasionally they'll run a play for him, but by and large, it's Keenan Allen, it's Austin Eckler, Gerald Everett, and now honestly, it's Jalen Guyton. So we'll see how it goes. Joshua Kelly didn't get. I thought he'd be getting a few more carries, but they only ran it 15 times total.
They looked horrendous. They looked horrendous.
Yeah.
I unfortunately was watching quite a bit of that game on Sunday night as I was trying to will Justin Herbert to even a mediocre game. I feel
like Staley's firmly on the hot seat.
I'm kind of surprised he hasn't been let go yet. Couple more losses and it may happen before the end of the season. Monday Night Football was not great, Bob. The Chicago Bears traveled to play the Minnesota Vikings, got the 12-10 victory. Dennis, if the season ended today, the Bears would have the number 1 overall pick and I think the number 5 or 6 overall pick. A lot of talk that it's time to move on from Justin Fields. He didn't have a terrible game, but in a game where he got 4 turnovers, only being able to score 4 field goals doesn't feel incredible. How secure is his position?
I don't know, to be honest, in part because it feels like the head coach and the offensive coordinator, they don't want to plan around Justin Fields' skill set. They want a different type of quarterback. Last night, he threw the ball 37 times, and it seemed like every pass, almost until the last drive, seemed like every pass was being thrown towards the sideline at the line of scrimmage is what it felt like. That's an exaggeration, and I get it. Fields did complete several passes to Cole Kmet, 5 yards over the middle of the field. But it feels like they're trying not to play to his strength, and he's doing everything he can to be a good team member and execute their plan, but he clearly gets frustrated. Now the fumbles he had a couple bad fumbles. That wasn't great. But they just aren't quite putting it together. They lost one of their offensive linemen for a bit. They just don't. They still have a lot of work to do, and I don't know how much Eberflus and Getsy are going to be able to go to kind of uplift him. I'm almost starting to think that when you're looking at making an offensive coordinator your head coach or your offensive coordinator, you're looking at making an offensive coordinator your head coach, don't look to the guy that's had a star quarterback.
Yeah.
Find those guys that are, getting production on 6 and 10 teams, 6 and 11 teams.
Meanwhile, Josh Dobbs had easily his worst game of the season, 1 touchdown, 4 interceptions. Vikings heading into a bye. Kevin O'Connell refused to commit to Josh Dobbs as a starter, saying they would look at everybody, including Nick Mullen and Jaren Hall. Do you think Dobbs remains the guy?
I think so. I mean, we know who Nick Mullins is, and Jaren Hall seems like he may still be injured a little bit. But to be fair, I think he tried a little too hard yesterday. He made some throws that just didn't quite get what he needed, and they got picked off. It was a tough situation, and some days you're going to throw 4 picks. It's just kind of the way it goes.
Yeah, I kind of think ultimately that he will probably give them their best chance. I mean, they're 6-6. If playoffs started today, they'd be in it in the NFC. So I'm with you. I'm not sure.
He hasn't had Justin Jefferson. He'll get Jefferson back after the bye.
Yeah, but we shall see. Well, that does it for week 12, but week 13 begins Thursday night. Dennis and I will be back with you on Thursday night previewing all of the week 13 games. There are 6 teams on a bye, the penultimate week for byes, but we do have quite a few teams that are out, including the Ravens, the Vikings, the Cardinals, the New York Giants, the Chicago Bears, and the Buffalo Bills. So there are some. I just looked at a few of my teams and openly wept because I forgot a couple of these players are out. But see how that goes. The Thursday night game, actually a pretty good one. Seattle Seahawks 6-5 at the 8-3 Dallas Cowboys. Kind of a big game for both teams. Seahawks need to get back on a winning path. The Cowboys, for as good as they have been, have not beaten a team that has more than 4 wins at any point this season. Would like for, if you're a fan of them, to see them beat a winning team. I think they get the win here at home on Thursday night, but what say you, Dennis?
Yeah, I like the Cowboys here. Now, obviously what this means is it's going to be 31-7 Seahawks, but
I will openly weep. I will openly weep. Need the Cowboys to play much better than that. Dak, if you're listening, a lot of fantasy teams where I'm missing pieces. You got to be the guy to come through for me.
We need another 40-pointer, Dak. Another 40-pointer.
I mean, 40 should be your floor.
Man, I'll tell you, I had been on a heater picking winners. Man, this last week I think I went like 4-11 or 4-5. Well, how many games would there be? 17.
There were 16.
I think I went like 5-11 or something. It was
just for straight up picks. Let me see.
Yeah, just picking the money line.
Where is ESPN? I went 10-6, so not incredible. For the season, I'm 113-67.
Yeah.
But I was happy. I finally did better against the spread. The last couple of weeks against the spread have been atrocious, but I was 10-6 against the spread too. There were a lot of massively big spreads.
Those are scary.
Yes. All right. Well, that'll do it for us today. We will be back with you on Thursday. Until then, if the people need something to fill their nights and days, Dennis, how can they do it?
Well, now that you found us, don't lose us. Go to your favorite podcast platform and hit that subscribe button, and we will show up in your feed usually twice a week, because we usually do 2 shows a week, will show up in your feed for your listening pleasure while you're doing your chores, while you're driving the kids to school and running errands. And then you can go leave us a rating and a review. Give us that boost. Our egos need it.
They certainly do. We will see you guys on Thursday. Have a great rest of your week.